Now let's take a look at prosody in general and just get an overview of that. Well, we use some terms, and if they're not as familiar to you, if you've forgotten them from phonetics class in grad school or undergrad even, we talk about segmentals and suprasegmentals, and the segmentals, those are the IPA chart basically, right? So the consonants and vowels, those are the segmentals. But the suprasegmentals are those larger pieces of connected speech. When working with the clients, sometimes I like to think of it as the segmentals as those are the bricks of a house, for example, because they can be uniform and they're discrete, versus the suprasegmentals represent much more of really the architecture, how those bricks go together to make something important. So we've got these two different levels, and you'll see that it's very important to work at both levels. Today's talk is going to be focused on the suprasegmental level because we're not talking about how to produce individual sounds of the language. We're talking about what happens when those sounds all come together and connect. And some definitions of prosody. Again, there are many definitions of prosody, and there is a broad and narrow definition there too, and it's really a continuum. But if you look at, again, the broad definition of prosody, it really is synonymous with suprasegmentals. It would basically just be the same term. And if you go to the narrow definition of prosody, it really is just something that we call intonation, which is the melody of speech. But in this course, we'll be a little bit closer to that broad definition. So in this course, we are going to consider prosody as covering intonation. So we'll get into what all of these things mean, but that's the melody of speech. Phrasal stress, so in other words, how you stress certain words when you're speaking in connected speech. Emphasis, right, when you change what the normal pattern is. We have phrasing, is how you break up your speech. And then rate, because that's tied into your speech rate. But that's where I'm drawing the line. It's a little bit artificial. You could include lexical stress. I'm not going to. I think that's a separate subject that could be another presentation. It's extremely challenging for our clients. But this is where I'm drawing the line. So I'm going to be covering these areas in today's talk. Now, taking a look here at English phrasal stress, this is also important because English works very differently than many other languages. And the way I like to illustrate this is just taking some words and putting them in random order and reading them out. Buy the to, went, store, I to, milk, some. That's what it would sound like, something like that, if you're just reading random words. But when you put them together in a sentence, you'll see how it's going to show you how English really works. So if we unscramble that, we're going to get, I went to the store to buy some milk. Or even, I kind of paused in there, but I went to the store to buy some milk. I could put it together as one phrase. So you can see a big difference there. And to illustrate it, I'm going to show the way it might come out. So something like this, and we could illustrate it and say, I went to the store to buy some milk. Went, store, buy, milk. So we kind of had these stress points there. Went, store, buy, milk. And milk got the most stress, but we also did jump up a bit on went, store, buy, milk. This is really important because many of our clients are actually going to approach sentences the way they approach the random words. So they might say, again, buy the to, went, store, I to, milk, some. They might say, I went to the store to buy some milk. More like that, choppier style, right? Versus buy the to, went, store, I to, milk, some. Very equal stress. And I went to the store to buy some milk. Very different stress. For one thing, it's shorter. I'm compacting some things. Even though I'm stressing some other words, I'm compacting, so the sentence is going to come out shorter. And then there are differences in stress. I mean, look at what happens, or listen to what happens in to the. I went to the store to buy some milk. I just said, I didn't even have a vowel in there, and I devoiced my th. I went to the store to buy some milk. It's just a very quick, that's all it really is. But our clients, if they are breaking things up differently, I went to the store, something like that, it's actually going to make them sound much less natural, and it can impact intelligibility again, because this is not what we are listening for as native speakers of English. Now, how can we explain a little bit more about what's going on here? One thing we want to look at is we want to look at content words versus function words, because that's the main thing that's going on. You have your content words and function words. Content words are also called open class words. So those are the words that are created every year. We have new ones. If somebody starts a new business, they might create a word like Google or Uber or Skype or any of those ones become new words, and we use them all the time. So they're entering the language every year. And those are your nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. Those are the main ones. The function words change over time, but very slowly. So we don't tend to add these. You're not going to add a lot of prepositions in a given year in the language, or an article. You know, when's the last time English added an article? I wouldn't hold your breath on that. So these are the ones that are really gluing the words together in the language. So they're closed class words. They're not going to, of course, they are added every once in a while, but sometimes hundreds or thousands of years will go by before one of these is added. But they work very differently. This is the main division about what's going on with these stress patterns. Let's move on to rate. So rate is something that comes up quite a bit, and I have a take on this that's backed by research, and not everybody's ready for this message, but just to summarize, generally you're going to want to speed your clients up. And I know that goes against what most people learn. SLPs love to slow everybody down. Again, I'm a career change, so coming into this field 20 years ago, and really I noticed that everybody's always slowing everyone down. And that really works in many ways when you're working with certain types of clients. But in the second language acquisition setting, there's good research that says that basically speeding the clients up is actually going to help them sound more natural, and in many cases also more intelligible. So this is something that SLPs are not always excited about hearing for some reason, but I want to get the message out there. And this comes from some research, again, from Dorwing and Monroe from 2001, so again, almost 25 years ago, where they did find that native speakers do prefer non-natives to speak slightly faster. And we also know from research, and it's also very something that is common sense, essentially, but even when we have clients who speak slowly and they're a little bit slower in their L1, in their native language, they're always going to speak English slower than whatever that level is. So it doesn't happen the other way around. People don't speak their second language faster than what they do in their L1. And then this is a great one, and I've modified this. The idea here is you just have one word conversations, and you're not going to add any words to it. So you would just say something like, with your client, or they're working together in pairs. Dinner? Ready. What? Leftovers, leftovers, leftovers. Again, again. Okay, you can play around with this and kind of have some fun. But there's different ways where sometimes you could turn it into a question, or you can imply something with the way someone responds to something. Another way of doing this, I like to do these ones, is create some conversation dialogue pairs here, really, where you can have your clients try to come up with two different, very distinct conversations. So if I start with this one, you might say something like, your friend Don is really funny. What do you mean? Well, I think you know what I mean. How long have you known him? Just a couple of years. Or, your friend Don is really funny. What do you mean? I think you know what I mean. How long have you known him? Just a couple of years. So the idea, again, funny is such an intonation impacted word because, again, it really depends on the context, but intonation is important too, whether something is funny as in laughing or funny as in unusual. Another one that is the classic one for these things is the word okay, how it can range from really essentially very, very good to pretty bad, depending on how you say it. How's that new restaurant? It's okay. How's that restaurant? Okay. So there's a wide range of what these words mean depending on the intonation pattern then. And then the role plays, you can have just a 2-person role play or 3-person role plays, and you could just make these up. Again, in the world now with ChatGPT, it should be pretty easy if you just want to come up with these using artificial intelligence, or sit down and write up your own if you want, or just find some. But we've had a lot of success with these over the years because it really will highlight when you're doing these in a group. You're going to notice and pick up on a lot of patterns that just would not be the typical way that you would say these. And you get some training opportunities later because you can go back in and redo it and just work on some different options for that. How do you work on phrasal stress? Well, here we have, again, you can do some nursery rhymes essentially. And what you might want to do with these is really just get your clients to clap along to these. So you might have something like, you could actually say it and they could identify how many beats it is, or they could practice with clapping, like 1, 2, buckle my shoe, 3, 4, knock at the door, right? You can get them to keep that rhythm going And what's key about that is that look at what happens when you have 1, 2. It's very easy. Clients can do that, right? 1, 2, no problem. But when we get down to knock at the door, that's when we have to reduce those function words at the, knock at the door. You don't want knock at the door, right? That's where we could really get that knock at the door. So those are very helpful. Again, you can have ones like Three Blind Mice, same thing. They all ran after the farmer's wife, right? So you can do the same clapping thing there, but it gives you a good opportunity to really focus on some of those ideas, and it's just a little bit of fun.